This is a quote I use all the time, but I think it's applicable. Is words from Padre Pio is to pray, hope, and don't worry. Sometimes we kind of think you got to do all these things in order before you can go to seminary, before you can enter religious life. You have to be perfect before you get there. But that's just unrealistic. It's just to keep praying to develop that relationship with Christ, and to just not worry about all the little things. They work themselves out if it's meant to be, and to just be willing to take that first step. That's always the hardest. So I grew up northwest side of Chicago in Elmwood Park. I attended St. Celestine Grammar School, so I started there when I was 3 years old. Catholic family, but we weren't the most religious or the most church-going, mostly Christmas and Easter and that. But went through all the years of Catholic school. Became an altar server, and I really enjoyed doing that. And even continued on. We had a special team for altar servers for high school. There's a few of us that did that. So I have close knit friends that were from that, and I continued on at St. Patrick High School, which is the oldest and greatest Catholic high school in the Archdiocese. And I love my time at St. Pat's, and it was there, especially towards the end of my time at St. Pat's, where I really started to think about being a priest. So starting that senior year and then continuing on, when I started college, I went to the University of Illinois in Champaign, and luckily we have an awesome Newman Center down there. So while I was at the Newman Center, I started to learn more about the faith and also experience real beauty in the liturgy that I think I'd kind of been deprived of before. And it was through the beauty of the liturgy that I started to think about, hey, would it be cool if I did that? I can see myself up there on the altar doing all that, and I'd be like, hey, what was that? And then kind of going back and then thinking about that and praying about it. And I was a priest that kind of came and went through my time in college. When I eventually moved back to the Chicago area. I did what I had told myself I would never do. I moved back in with my parents after college, and I worked a number of jobs. But through that time, there was always this frustration. I couldn't feel like I can get to where I want to go. My dream was to be a high school teacher, go back to St. Pat's and be a teacher there, a history teacher. I was looking at applying to different master's programs. But I just couldn't make the traction, couldn't get forward. I was just very frustrated throughout those years. It was December of 2014. I just remember one night I couldn't fall asleep. I was laying in bed. There's no reason for it. I didn't have a lot of caffeine before bed or anything. But the thought of priesthood came to me very strongly and very clearly. And it was about going to Mundelein, about being a parish priest. And I was like, I went to bed convinced this is exactly what I'm going to do and everything like that. I finally fell asleep. I woke up the next day and I'm like, well, I should probably think about this a little bit more. So I looked at the Vocations website, I watched a number of the videos they had there, and then I reached out to the Vocation director at the time, and we scheduled a meeting, and the next thing I know, I was coming back to Mundelein for an exploring priesthood weekend. It was at that weekend in particular where I went here, I'd been to Mundelein before, but I came here can I see myself living here? Can I see this is a place where I am not just visiting, but actually living? I left that weekend convinced, this is where God is calling me. I can see myself living this life, living here, particularly here at Mundelein. So I went through the application process, and that fall I started my first year of pre-theology here at Mundelein. Just as before seminary, I was frustrated and I couldn't get forward and things just wouldn't work out for me. Ever since I started the application process, everything just started to fall into place. And I finally, I was moving forward, moving towards what God was ultimately calling to do. I just didn't really realize that all those years before.